Hey, this is Kirk.
And this is Byrd. Welcome to the Kirk and Byrd Show.
It is Tuesday evening, October 12th. We got a panel tonight. Do you want to introduce our distinguished guests, Hudson?
Yeah, well, I tell you what, I'll say we have with us one of our previous guests, Dave Combs, UVA guy, specialist in that area, but he also is very knowledgeable in a lot of stuff. And then we've got Mook, Marcus Washington from Making the Cut with Mook. And I'll let those guys also just say a little bit, introduce themselves. But those are just two guys we're glad to have here as we have like a little roundtable discussion here on the Kirk and Byrd Show. Go ahead, Dave.
Hey, thanks for having me on, guys. Obviously, a lot going on in the DC area in sports, as well as nationally, because of this, John Gruden thing. Then you guys are going to be talking about the Kyrie Irving situation and with COVID, and it's been a very interesting day in sports media. And I think what my theme is going to be tonight, what the media's role in this John Gruden situation is, and where local media here in the DC metro area, I think, left some crumbs on the table and didn't dig as deep as they should have. And we'll talk about that later. I'm going to let Mook get on here and, talk about what he's got.
Yeah, it's Marcus Luke Washington. Yeah, same thing. There's been a lot of things going on in the Washington, D.C. area, and it's kind of odd to see an investigation into one franchise cost someone their job into another franchise. That doesn't happen that often, but the Washington, D.C. area, and I know we'll get into this, it just seems like the NFL is one of the biggest entities in the nation's capital, and it's always in the news for the wrong reasons, and it can't get out of its own way. And so, I'm looking forward to chopping it up with everyone about this.
All right, well, look, hey, Kirk, why don't you, for those who may not be as familiar, give a 2-minute brief summary of what some of the things going on with the John Gruden situation and what exactly that is for anybody who wasn't quite in tune to it yet.
Sure. Monday Night Football was on last night, and evidently emails that were racist, misogynistic, and homophobic surfaced. And I think 3 hours later or hours later, Gruden was fired by the owner. And then we can go into more detail, but what's happened today is from about 10 or 11 a.m., that hit. And as Marcus was talking about, it's come local. All right. It's come back to communications with Bruce Allen, some prominent business people in Tampa. You've had some folks that have had a chance to react. Morris Smith is the head of the NFL Players Association, which is headquartered right here in Washington, D.C. And I think Dave's got some great perspective. And Marcus also was talking about, football, is in a bad light here in the nation's capital and Northern Virginia and Redskins Park. I just looked at the news line. I don't see anything that has come up, but my prediction is, and I'll let you guys take back over. My prediction is by tomorrow, a good chunk of the day, we're going to see some emails. We're going to see some of those things. I don't think there's any way they can hide them. And I think the story is it's not going to be you guys can tell me if you agree. It's not going to be a 2-day cycle. All right. This is going to stay for a while.
Nope.
Yeah.
Nope. In the media, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say one thing. I was going to pass it to you, David. One thing, Kirk, he did not get fired. He officially resigned. And that brings in a whole nother group of questions to go along with that 10-year, $100 million contract. Is he going to get the remaining $60 million? Like, we don't know those details yet. He probably was going to be fired, and maybe it was recommended he resign. And then that we'll find that's something I want to know a little bit more about too, because if he was fired, maybe he does get the money. If he resigns, does he get it? So I just want to make that point, David. I'll pass it to you. But the other thing I want to let you know is, yes, this is a national story, but I make the point that, bring up the point again. This is a very local issue that is now national from the perspective of the involvement with the Washington Football Organization and Bruce Allen and the Redskinettes, the cheerleaders. So we are right in the middle of this. We are the right guys to have on this topic, but David, go and let you go ahead and take the first shot, man. It's a lot of places we can go with.
Washington, at its core, and everyone on here knows this, everyone that's listening, our main export in this town is politics. That's what this town is.
Yeah.
This story broke over the weekend, and in the media industry, that's called the laundry. That's where you put a story that you don't want to get news cycles, okay? Yeah. This blew up. This is the garbage truck that backed up and fell on top of the WFT, okay? And when the New York Times put this out, it was a trickle, and it got bigger and bigger and bigger. It hit the internet, social media, and people are asking questions. Here's the first question that I have, and I'll throw this out to the panel. The local media here, the Washington Post, the Washington Times, ESPN 980, and then more recently WJFK, there's been a bit of a drip campaign against, and the Washington City paper, which is an independent paper. Right. There's been a drip campaign against Daniel Snyder, okay, and the WFT under his leadership, his stewardship, okay, and ownership. And he's been called out as not a good owner, and the team's record has reflected that. But it's this feeling around Redskins Park, this feeling around FedEx Field, that these are not your father's or your uncle's Redskins. These are not this is not the same franchise. And the common denominator is Daniel Snyder and his leadership, his stewardship.
Absolutely.
Here's what I'll say on my final point on this topic. I'll pass it to you guys and see what you think about what I said. I am 50, and I grew up in the District of Columbia, and I grew up in Mount Pleasant. In Mount Pleasant neighborhood, there's a bus called the 42 bus, Stadium Armory. It starts in over a Latin and African-American part of town and goes slowly through the city and across town all the way out to RFK. When I was a kid, I remember after Redskins games, those buses would be full of people coming back. I mean, full of people just pouring off with the Redskins gear on. And I remember as a kid watching Archie Manning play, Peyton's father, Eli's dad, Archie's grandfather, watching him play football for the Saints. And I remember their fans wearing bags over their heads. So Big Tony and I did the show Sunday from FedEx Field. I've never seen that many Saints fans outside of New Orleans. There was a bunch of Saints fans, guys. As I mentioned on my social media, if I'd been smart, I would have made up a couple of gallons of my grandmother's gumbo, and I would have been out there with a food truck. I would have made $100,000 out there. There were people, and these were not people that lived. These people do not live here. They flew here. Yeah. They drove here for this game, and they showed out. It was. I've never in a million years would I have thought in my lifetime I would see the Saints travel like that and be able to travel here, because usually WFT fans have bought up all the tickets. That is not the case anymore.
Marcus, let me ask you. What do you see happening Wednesday, Thursday, Friday? I mean, I've got some feelings, but I'd like to get your opinion on tomorrow. Tomorrow's going to be a big day, Thursday and Friday.
Well, I think we're going to see more of the owners responding. I know that Jerry Jones responded a little bit today. He didn't give too much. And my big takeaway from this is that I can understand why the NFL doesn't want to release this, because of the other field I know a lot about non-disclosure agreements. And this idea that all these clubs make their employees sign non-disclosures So it does give them a legal way of you not being able to release the dirt. I don't think people always read everything in their non-disclosure. I do.
Right.
And so when the 31 other owners and entities get together, they're thinking to themselves, do we want to empower the people who we make sign non-disclosures to protect us from any bad things that might happen? And in the NFL, the answer is no, which is why I do think you're seeing just the steadfast, we're not going to release anything having to do with the Washington football team. Because if you empower those people in the non-disclosure, the next thing you know, maybe there's something that we don't know about the Chargers, and then maybe there's something we don't know about the Seahawks, and then maybe there's something we don't know about the Chiefs. And now all of a sudden,
exactly.
The NFL owners who enjoy the highest pulpit of all professional sports, and if you look up the makeup of the people who own the NFL teams, they are not used to being said no. They are not used to being entitled, which is why it always makes me laugh when they talk about players being entitled. There is not a more entitled bunch historically than NFL owners and there's the other entities that they own. So no, I think they're going to steadfastly try to fight this. I don't know how long they can. And just another note, and I know this hasn't been brought up. I tweeted it out earlier because it's one of these things that are near and dear to my heart. The people who are defending Gruden, who for the next 72 hours are going to act like they care about domestic violence and sexual assault, and what about Warren Sapp, and what about Antonio Bryant, or I know I said it wrong, Antonio Brown. They sicken me because the domestic violence and sexual assault issue is not something for you to pull out because you're upset that a guy who no longer has a job has earned the right not to have that job. And then you come off so disingenuous of bring these titles, these things up as if you care, when you know by the time Sunday gets here, the only thing you care about is whether you got your fancy football lineup in or not. That bothers me. And I know I kind of strayed off, but that bothers me.
So, Rusty, let's let you chime in. The question, how long, I mean to cut you off, but I just want to give you a segue. How long has the league known about this? Because it's not the last 4 months.
They've known about this. Look, if they've got 650,000 emails, they know a lot. But what the thing that's interesting to me is I don't think they're going to have a choice at some point, because what the NFL has done is clearly this: they're picking and choosing their battles. They knew that stuff was in there for a long time. It's when they seize the right opportunity, and we know it has to be the NFL that leaked this. If they don't want people to, they open this Pandora box, because I know they're the ones that probably released it, to the Wall Street Journal. Roger Goodell's probably a little pissed. He got called some names up in there. And it's interesting that you have this many emails, this many things going on, and they selectively use it. And the story is John Gruden. I think, to me, and we can talk about it, I think we're taking it to where it should be, like Bruce Allen, who's the president of the organization. And I know he resigned after pressure, but to me, one of the bigger fallouts in this is, look, nothing Gruden says really surprises me. Okay, boys talking to their boys, some of that stuff happens. I'm willing to, and as a black man, I'm not going to say he's a racist. I don't know. People say things to their boys or the way they feel. I don't know. I don't know the man. I don't really know where his heart is. All I know is it doesn't look good. None of it looks good. He hit all the things that we in 2021 have said no. Like, just being honest, the F word, I haven't heard it or said it in years. I mean, I'll be honest, I said it was a common thing, but who even says that? Because one, it's just offensive, what it stood for, what it means. It's like, if I even heard that nowadays, I'd be like, what are you talking about? Like, you can't use that or say that. But the thing is, he hit everything. He talked about female referees. He talked about gay players, and he's got one on his team. He talked about he talked about DeMar Smith and big lips. He talked about all these things. He talked about concussions. This email didn't seem like these emails were from the last 10 years. These seem like maybe written letters from the 50s, like how the mindset of old school football, it just sounds like that's what it really was. And it also lets you know, we don't know these people. We don't know. John Gruden says something and talks about banana yellow, whatever, and he makes all this fun stuff in these commercials, Hulu commercials. We don't know any of these guys, so we don't know the ones that have been portrayed to us to be bad. We don't know the ones that have been portrayed to us to be good. And that's the thing I take out of all of this. Gruden's a small part, but overall, I like where we're going with this, with the Washington football team, because I was perplexed at how in the world Dan Snyder has been allowed to keep that organization. He said he would never change the name. Well, that's why this is serious, because he changed the name. When you've got these things with these cheerleaders, the women, so many women coming out, I just don't understand how he's been allowed to keep ownership of that organization. And I'll say this, to your point, David, I'm not from Washington, D.C., but I am from Virginia. We're from Hampton. That's part of our thing. And growing up there, the Redskins were still the local team. And I grew up a Steelers, Chicago Bears fan, but also a Redskins fan. Like, I love Washington Redskins football in the 80s. Art Monk, I knew everybody on those teams, the Smurfs, the defense, everything. And I moved here after college. And the one thing I remember, I actually went to a game the year they won the Super Bowl, the last Super Bowl. But my uncle used to always say, hey, Rusty, if you want to get Redskins tickets, you live here now. It's a 20-year waiting list. You can sign up, but it's going to take 20 years before you can even probably get tickets. And that was actually a source of pride, that you wouldn't see those New Orleans Saints fans here. You wouldn't see some of the things that have gone on, and just the way this ownership group has run things. And I have personally stepped back, and I'm not a Redskin fan. And I want to be living in this area. So let's have at it. I think that the Redskins organization, the Washington football team as an organization, has to be held accountable. And I think, look, I'll say this. I work at the State Department, and there were emails that certain groups had to go through regarding the former Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton. That was an email issue. And certain people had to read every email. And there was stuff in there that most of it was nothing, but there was stuff in there. And so if we've done that with 90,000 emails, now if we've got 300 and plus, let us know what's going on.
So, we've got racism, we've got homophobia, a lot of misogyny. What's going to brew? What's the prediction? DC, once you chime in, what's going to bubble up to be the big? Because I think there's more coming. We talked about it being local. What's your opinion?
It's if we were sitting around a table, everyone with a beer, I'd have to agree with everybody. There's going to be more, Kirk. You're right. At this point, I agree with Byrd here. They're going to continue to trickle these emails out. Okay. And I hate to say it, I think there's other shoes that are going to drop.
Yep.
Okay. I think what we are going to start to see won't be about a gay player. What you're going to see next is, this black guy can't play quarterback. And you're just basically throwing a match into a pit of hot grease. That's what's going to probably come out next. That's what I really think.
There has to be an email about Kaepernick in there. They obviously colluded to not get his brother a job. There have to be emails in there.
There's probably thousands.
I can almost guarantee it. Rusty. You're right. There's just so much that's out there that has been whispered, and there's whispering campaigns, and why this guy drops in the draft and why that guy doesn't, and all of this stuff. It's football, but it's a people sport, and things about people, you learn things about people, there's going to be some interesting stuff that comes out that some of these owners, coaches, and GMs don't want to get out.
Right.
And it's going to be ugly. It's going to be embarrassing. And you've already seen the Tampa Bay Buccaneers make a move. You've seen that they've removed John Gruden from their ring of fame. That was that press release came out today.
Mhm.
Okay. So the Buccaneers are already saying to themselves, we're about to get, what they call in, counterintelligence and espionage. They're about to get some blowback because John Gruden was in their building. Now, something that's interesting, we've talked about race. There was a race element to Tony Dungy's firing in Tampa. A lot of people felt that he got fired because he was black, and they hired this white younger coach to take his place. This brash, kind of abrasive guy to take over for Tony Dungy. Tony Dungy's comments on before the Sunday night football game were that he was very forgiving to John Gruden and saying, we'll take him at his word that he addressed this and it's not a problem. This is the issue. A lot of black people are going after Tony Dungy right now. And at first I was a little disappointed in what he said. But now that I think about it, Tony Dungy got fired from that job for John Gruden. He might not want there to be blowback, people saying, well, you're just upset because John Gruden took your job and won a Super Bowl with your players. That might be Tony Dungy's way of kind of backing off of the issue. Again, Ron Rivera was on ESPN 980 today, and he was asked about the John Gruden stance on race and so on and so forth. And they asked him directly. It was on the Junkies. They said, you're a minority coach. What do you think about these words against minorities? And Ron Rivera wouldn't touch it.
Nope.
Would not touch it. Wouldn't comment on it, and said he wants to move forward. So now you've got one minority coach that's in this job, and he doesn't even want to talk about what was said about minority. And I like Ron Rivera in general. I like the idea of him as a coach. We won't talk about how he's coaching. That's a whole other show. But he needed to say something. Yeah. That's the problem that I think that we're having here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And I'll end on this piece and let everyone else get in. And I'm sorry, I'm passionate just like you guys are. I'm sorry. When Arthur Blank had Mike Vick as his quarterback, and then the dogfighting allegations came, and then everything came down and fell down on his head, Arthur Blank was out in front on this. He talked about what his organization did wrong, what Mike Vick did wrong, and what they were going to do to make things right. That has not happened yet in the Washington football team franchise. Hasn't happened yet.
Yeah.
Until that happens, we are going to continue to get this trickle, death by a thousand cuts. And then again, another thing that came out today, Kirk, this came out today. Those pictures of the cheerleaders are floating around. The topless cheerleaders for the WFT. This has already been adjudicated. They've already paid, but that's the thing. They swept that Wilkinson report under the rug. Well, there was no report. It wasn't written. It was a verbal report given in the commissioner's office. And let's do a map quest from the NFL commissioner's office to the New York Times. You could probably walk it. Okay. So you're right. These leaks are coming from the league office. This is Goodell.
Yeah, this is Goodell. But you know what? I wonder, did Goodell, somebody's going to have to be the sacrificial lamb. Somebody. I don't know if each team is going to have to offer somebody up. If the league overall, like Goodell may end up like having somebody or one of Goodell's, underlings, somebody's going to have to take the fall because like we know there are things out there. So they're going to have to give us a little more now. The NFLPA is asking to see some of these, see the emails. I think the organizations know that to go back to Kirk's original thing, like Kirk, no, this is not going to die out in a couple of days. Like this is going to be ongoing because we're going to find out more and more and more. And a lot of this could have been shut down. One, if they had relieved Dan Snyder of that organization. or forced him out. Look, when the Clippers owner, when he was forced out, he made $2 billion. When Richardson, the Carolina Panthers owner, was forced out, he still made $2 billion. Like, you know what? We know you love the organization and the team, Mr. Snyder, but you got to go, bro, and you'll be fine. You'll be fine.
Marcus,
Yeah.
I wanted to flip over to you.
It doesn't surprise me with the Ron Rivera thing, because I always like to remind people when Jerry Richardson finally had decided to sell, he wanted to dedicate the last inning of the game ball to Jerry Richardson. And that was the only thing that I needed to know about Ron Rivera, because I thought that was very bad timing, and I thought that was the wrong message to send. But when you look at the core fans and the fans who live and die by the NFL, a good group of them just don't want to be bothered with there being checks and balances for certain people in certain positions. And this is why this thing has turned into, oh, I don't care. Well, it was 10 years ago, and who can lose their job for something that you said 10 years ago? I kind of laugh at that, because in my business, you can certainly lose your job for something that you put in an email for 10 years. 10 years ago, there's very little sections of limitations if they feel like you don't deserve to have certain access. So the length of it didn't bother me, but I am disturbed by it that when this is all said and done after Wilkerson's report, that David Snyder not only wasn't forced to sell the team, but he got more of control of the team between him and his wife, and we know that's more of a paperwork thing than a reality thing, and it's just disturbing because he is that type of guy who has locked in saying, you're not going to make me sell. And the one big thing I was saying the Donald Sterling case was that Donald Sterling's wife works in conjunction with the NBA to make that happen. And her support was very, very important in that, because there was a lot of NBA owners, Mark Cuban being one, that was very, very nervous about there being a mechanism to remove an owner, because his thing was, well, that's always going to be a moving line, and who's going to be the next one to lose their franchise, and are we setting a dangerous precedent? And this is what I'm saying about with the owners in the NFL. No one is more arrogant and more entitled than an NFL owner, and no one is more stringent on who they do not allow in their little boys club, especially being the majority owner. And that's done for a reason. And some of it is to kowtow down to their base. So my thing is that their core base is sitting here saying, well, we cared when Kaepernick wouldn't stand up. And they didn't care about these little 2-word terms like cancel culture. As I tell people all the time, if you want to rally the troops of the low IQ, have a two-word thing that they can rally around, and you can hurt into the pastures of ignorance. And that's what it is. Oh, it's cancel culture. No, it's not. This guy deserved to lose his job. Now, technically, he did resign. He deserved to lose his job. I do think that's a good question brought up by Rusty that says, how much of that remaining 70 yards does he going to get? Because, we don't know what sort of deal was made in exchange for that resignation. Because I don't think it's as simple as him saying, well, Mark, I'm going to resign and, left all that money on the table. That's not how John Gruden works. I always go back to when the Raiders got rid of Kiffin, and Kiffin said, do I still get my money? That's what he asked Al Davis when Al Davis got rid of him. And this hits home to me because, I'm 51, and we grew up in rural Faulkner County, and my father and mother had a satellite dish. So before all of this NFL Sunday Ticket, I was able to watch the Raiders play. I don't have any qualms about admitting that I grew up a Raiders fan from the 70s on. And it is embarrassing. And it is shows that Mark Davis is not as bad. Al has did a lot of things wrong. We all know that. But Al had no problems having a woman as an executive. Al had no problems with having a black man as a person. That didn't make Al perfect, but he didn't have any problems doing that. The NFL owners today, instead of giving Airbnb a chance, they'll give it to Urban Meyer. Because Urban Meyer looks like a coach. They'll give it to Cliff Kingsbury, because Cliff Kingsbury looks like a coach. So all these prevailing things are what wraps around the whole answer to the question of how does this happen? This happens entitled people who have never felt like they should be held to checks and balances have all this money, all this control, especially through the CBA, and that comes back to this. You release those emails. How does that impact the next CBA negotiation? And don't think the NFL owners aren't asking that question, because they are. Because they never give an inch in those NFL. They will lock out, they'll use everything. They never have to give an inch. They certainly don't want to give the NFL Players Association any interest by giving them any trial. And as far as D. Smith, we don't even know when the next CBA comes up if D. Smith is going to be the NFL PA president. There's an important vote coming up, and it could be someone else. Now, what if it's someone, I'm not saying it's this person, but what if it's someone like a Michelle Roberts, who will go and sit down there and say, oh, no, we're playing hardcore right here. You know,
Yeah.
And so they're protecting more than what's happening in Washington. They're protecting everything from their fellow owner all the way down to the next collective bargaining agreement.
Well, I think from what I'm hearing, some of the theories out there are, and these are some of the conspiracy theories, is that the NFL helped leak the information about DeMaurice Smith to get him in their pocket. Okay, because they already, he was actually a vote going to be coming up. There was, within 2 days, they were supposed to be voting as to whether or not in March of 2022, they would even open his position up to be up for election. And the recent vote, I guess over the last week or so, they voted to allow D to keep his position, or at least not have it come open for for election or whatever, for an open election. And what the speculation is, a lot of the players were already not happy with the deal, the last deal, because it's a 10-year deal. You don't give that much, and a lot of people felt like the owners really made out, and they got D where they want him. So now you already kind of got him, to buy in on the last deal. Now you helped him probably get to maintain his job. They leaked the stuff, and how much does he owe them? How much will he actually fight, for the players when the owners did him a solid? I don't know. That's part of what some of the folks out there are saying. In the conspiracy world, I don't know. I know a lot of players weren't happy with the deal, and 10 years is way too long.
Well, Teddy Boo and Upshaw,
Gene Upshaw,
relationship. And the relationship was close enough to kind of cheese off some of the owners and cheese off some of the players, which is probably why it worked. But since then, the NFL owners have not allowed that commissioner's position to be as influential. And that's the way they control it. And maybe that's what it is. I don't know. I do know, like yourself, a lot of players do not like the current deal. But to tie it back into this being something of how this hits home locally, I know Jerry Jones is one of the power brokers in the NFL. I don't think that's a secret to everything. And Jerry Jones does like Daniel Snyder. And, everything I've read has said that they do have a good relationship. Does he agree with everything Danny does? No. But he knows that Washington's franchise from evaluation is very, very important to the NFL of how much they're worth. And I do think this is part of the reason why we're seeing protection for Daniel Snyder from the fellow owners, because the Washington football team, as far as what they're worth, is very, very important to the NFL. Now you can say all of the franchises are worth a lot. All of the franchises are worth a lot, but I think Washington, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, they're like second or third on the Forbes list, and so you don't want a signature franchise to be dragged through the mud, sort of, in this batch, or that's the way it comes.
Dave, let me ask Dave a question, Hudson. So, Watergate taught us the term, it's never the crime, it's the cover up. So there's lots of covering up going on right now. And, New York's the media capital of the world, but Washington, D.C. is the political capital of the world. So the next Redskins press conference, you're going to have the top dogs from all of the media outlets here. Ron Rivera is not going to be on the fan talking to the sports junkies. He's going to be talking to some of the biggest names, and you're talking 60 minutes. My question to you, Dave, is, and we can go around, do a round table. Do you think with the situation, and Marcus, with some of the things that you just went over and articulated, could we see an owner going down? Because Dan Snyder's already in hot water. And, you know, maybe we could see in 1 week, 7 days, maybe we see a dozen owners, you know, being lassoed in, and, you know, they knew about certain behavior, because this behavior is everywhere. What do you think, Dave? Do you think Snyder could go down?
I do. I go all the way back to the very beginning of Snyder's ownership. I think everybody remembers Sean McDonough, his great voice for CBS Sports. His father, Will McDonough, was a major seminal journalist for the NFL out of Boston. And this guy, Will McDonough, knew virtually every ownership group in the league. And when I mean he knew them, it was a different relationship that media had back in the 60s and 70s with ownership. Dan Snyder had just bought the Redskins, and he was at his first ownership meeting, the winter owners meetings. And it's always held at maybe, you know, a 5-star, 6-star hotel and resort. The owners come in, they bring their wives. You can eat off the floor at these places. This is not a cheesy Quality Inn, okay? These are great hotels. Dan Snyder and his wife complained all weekend. The owner of the resort was playing golf with the Mara family, one of the Mara family. I think it was Wellington Mara, and one of the Hunts, the owners of the Chiefs. They were playing golf. Again, this is a big time resort. The golf cart comes out. One of the gals that works at the golf club hops out and hands the owner of the hotel the phone. He gets on the phone. Will McDonough is standing right there. He's listening, he's listening, he's listening. He says, if that guy says one more word to a barmaid, to a waitress, to a bellman, you pack his bags and you throw them out the front door, and you tell him to get the hell out of my hotel. Hung up the phone, gave it back to the girl. She gets on the golf cart and drives away. And McDonough is like, oh my God, what was that? He said it was that asshole Dan Snyder. This is how he introduced himself to being an owner. Okay, he has not been well liked from the moment he got into the league. The way he's behaving now, it doesn't shock me. I do think at this point, the owners are probably going to have to make a move themselves. And you know that they've already tried. The inquiry was brought by the NFL. It was brought by the owners. So Daniel Snyder and his ownership group, or what's left of it, because he's pushed out and bought out his other owners, I think we're going to see a move in the next couple of weeks. I will say this, it's October. Daniel Snyder will not be the owner of the Washington football team in 2022. It'll be that soon.
Marcus, you agree, Marcus?
I think I'm a little bit more cynical of the NFL owners, and I just don't have the trust that they can make the right decision on this. And I don't think that the commissioner of the NFL has the power that he should in the best interest of the game to be able to do it. I will gladly be wrong. In fact, I will come out and say, I hope I am wrong. I think he should have been removed long ago. I think he should have been vetted better before them awarding him the team. And it has to come to the point where Daniel Snyder is costing them money, because I do feel like
there you go. I think that's the key.
Right.
It's going to be, to me, again, I'm talking about that sacrificial lamb. They may offer up Daniel Snyder to just keep their books and their emails closed. Like maybe just take him and let's be done with this. But again,
sacrifice him. Yeah.
But Daniel Snyder did not get there by being a dummy. Like he knows how to play the game, and he's done that. He did it at a very young age. Like he's buying this organization in his mid-30s. And look, David, I'm right with you. One of the reasons I've turned away from the Skins is because of how poorly he's treated his fan base. I remember going to games when he first bought the team, and he got them to change the law that you couldn't park at Landover Mall and walk across. And that's just hurting the team. And his alternative was, back then they closed the Capitol Center, but was to spend $20 and park at the old Cap Center and get on shuttle buses to bring you over. And the buses were always too full. So you ended up walking that mile and a half. And that just told me he didn't care about the fans. And he has never cared about the fans, although he is and was a fan. So he would be doing this region, the true fans. I think a lot of people would jump back on board if he sold the team. I'm hoping that you are right, but I think I'm kind of with you, Mook. The guy knows how to play. Like, he should have been gone, with the release of all this information with the cheerleaders and everything. And he's got something on those other owners. That may be the thing. He may be like, look, Jerry and you and you and you, like, if y'all try to get rid of me, I know what you guys have done also.
Yeah, Jerry Jones definitely doesn't want emails being released.
Right.
Well, that's, I think this whole thing in 48 hours is going to look a lot different, Yep. So what role do you think Tampa? What's going to happen down in Tampa with, Gruden being down there and Bruce Allen being down there, Bruce Allen being with the Raiders? I just looked up a picture of his house in McLean, man. Whew, nice.
If I may jump in here, the Glazer family's not going to screw around with this. Okay, they're going to make preemptive moves. Removing John Gruden from their Ring of Fame today speaks to the fact that they have Tom Brady in their building. They have a winner in their building. They've won a Super Bowl, a second Super Bowl, and they do not want anything to tarnish that. They're taking a drive towards another Super Bowl. So if anybody's going to be aggressive, it's going to be the Glazer family. Right. And again, the NFL is a family business. That's what it is. The Hunt family, the Glazers, who else? The family in Denver, who's actually, unfortunately, the Bowdens, they're going to sell. And before that, the Cooks, the Rooneys, the Maras. The Glazers have their little fiefdom down there in Tampa. They're not going to let this slip on and roll back on them. I can guarantee that.
What about, Rusty, what do you think about federal, national politicians chiming in on this? Because Biden, president of the United States right now, was called some unpleasant names. I believe Barack Obama was made fun of, and others. You think that'll happen
By
tomorrow?
Gruden? Yeah, Gruden called. I don't know. I didn't hear the Obama. I saw the Biden comment. Look, I don't think
he called him a clueless keyword.
Yeah. So look, politicians. They're politicians. So I think they're just going to kind of go with the wave of how things are blowing, and I don't think they're going to say too much, because in the end, they can't throw stones. They don't want anybody really going into and really following up on anything on them. They'll probably do the politically correct thing. They'll probably pull a Ron Rivera, or Tony Dungy. They're not going to. I don't think they're going to do. They're politicians, and so because you got the group out here that do. There's some people that don't think Gruden did anything wrong, and they're like we all seem to be in the same camp. Maybe we need to find somebody that doesn't agree with where we are, because there are people out there. I don't want to get too political, but there's a lot of people that wouldn't have thought the last couple of elections would have gone the way they've gone. So I think the politicians will stand down. Won't be that big of a deal. I would like to see, overall, what is the league going to do to correct a lot of the things that I think they've handled wrong. I'm still bitter. Like, about the Kaepernick situation. Like, I didn't watch NFL football for 2 years. I was just like, nope, I'm gonna stick with my high school and my college. And because I don't think it's right. And even today, I only really get into the professional game is because I have these conversations like this. Like, my boys at work or some of my friends are like, the conversations are going on, so I gotta be able to speak to them. But yeah, not happy with the NFL, but I know exactly what I'm getting.
Well, you're not going to hear Colin Kaepernick talk about this because
Nope.
Mook, Marcus, non-disclosure. I mean, that settlement.
He took his money. He got his money.
And maybe they knew about this storm coming, lots of scandals that have happened in our country, especially political. People saw them coming 15, 20 years. It was just whether or not it would materialize. So I happen to think that the White House will say something because in 48 hours, things will be a lot different. We have our first woman vice president. The misogyny, how much more are we going to find out about that? And, we were talking, we all agree.
There's got to be more. There's got to be more in there,
right.
Kirk.
I know, but here's the thing. I was telling Rusty, we have to be careful about this because you can't throw stones. All right. Email, when I started working 30 years ago, email was around. It was in its infancy stages. But who has not been a part as a male of an inappropriate email, either sexually or homophobic? I've seen them.
Yeah, okay,
but I don't make $100 million a year, and I'm not sending it to major people in the public eye.
Kirk, okay, that's true.
Okay.
That's fine. But even 10 years ago, you didn't see at the back of my emails at state.gov. Okay. And that's where all this comes from, is the fact that Bruce Allen used the Washington Redskins NFL email. Like, if it's just Bruce Allen at Gmail, we don't even have these conversations. Okay. So that's, yeah, we might have had, hey, look, I'm being honest. I got a group of guys. We send texts and jokes and and Facebook. People are sharing stuff on Messenger and all that. I can't help some of the things that I get. It's some stuff's inappropriate or it's just guy humor. I'm not going to sit here and act like that I haven't seen or been a part of some of that. But I'm also not running a certain organization. I'm also not. I know what's right and what's wrong. And, people know also not to send me certain things because it's wrong, and yeah, I mean.
And on top of that, Rusty, the other big difference between it is that the people being discussed, whether this is on private email or on the other email, are impacting other people's jobs. So you could tell a racy joke, whatever the case may be, but when it's influencing other people's jobs, whether it's discussion of a player, whether it's discussion of a coach, and those type of things, then it becomes different because it becomes an HR issue. And HR issues do bleed outside of the workplace. And all of us go through that, might not pay attention when you go on a job and when you're doing the mandatory training because you just want to get the training over with. But those things are addressed. People just don't read the fine print. And they say, well, I should be able to say or do whatever. And they don't realize, well, a lot of times you can say or do things, but it does not mean that it's void of consequence. And that's the thing that people don't get. Now, I am far from being a constitutional law expert. I did take 3 constitutional law classes in college. So from a social media perspective, that makes me an expert. But I will say this. I will say that I don't think that people understand the people who are defending Gruden today of it's a private email and, oh my gosh, you should be able to say what you want to say, that there's a difference between what those things spell out as far as being punished by the government and then what a private employer can do. And it's a huge difference. And so when people say, well, I don't understand why he couldn't say this, and this was a private conversation, and blah, 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 as if there's some sort of job protection behind it. But there is no job protection behind it. And legally, there is no avenue. It is not a constitutional violation. And that's the thing when we have social media. People tend to act like they are experts on things that they have no business discussing from. And you can say, and I come from a different era, like I said, I'm 51. And I took all the speech and debate classes, whether I was in high school, college, or whatever. And one of the things about saying, in my opinion, genuinely was followed by fact. In my opinion, it's this based upon fact. Now people feel like, in my opinion, means everything that I say after that, I can completely invent, I can completely manufacture. And then when you say, well, that doesn't have any factual base to it, then it's like, well, that's my opinion. And so many things have changed with social media and how people convey themselves. But the people who think that Gruden somehow has some sort of job protection, it baffles me that they think that a private employer, and this goes into the Kyrie thing, that a private employer does not have options on all. It's like I tell people all the time. There's a difference between a constitutional court case and a civil rights court case. And people tend to try to reference civil rights court cases as constitutional court cases. I keep trying to tell people that's not what it is. And no, it's not interchangeable. But so when people, and even with the Kyrie situation, the Nets, per the collective bargaining agreement, they have options too. And Kyrie has the option. Kyrie can say, I don't want to do this and I don't want to do that. And that's fine. He's not necessarily losing his job, so to speak, but that doesn't mean that the organization, per the collective bargaining agreement, don't have options on their side too. And it's not a violation of Kyrie's rights if they exercise those options.
Yeah. Look, guys, go ahead, Kirk.
One last thing I was going to say is if whenever there's a Redskins home game, not every single time, but have you ever seen when they show the cameras in that, who's in that that box with Dan Snyder? Both sides of the aisle, Supreme Court justices, senators, people in politics. That's why I agree with you, DC. I think Snyder has a really good chance of going down. And I think that I like the way you pointed it out, Rusty. This is going to take some time, to unfold. And they're going to have a sacrificial lamb. Now, Mook's going to look like the expert here if power and money all wins out. But Rusty, we were just communicating that we're hitting about 50 minutes, and we know people are hearing everybody. Stephen A. Smith that we're talking about today, his opinion's coming up, but appreciate both. Go ahead, Rusty.
I just wanted to, we're about to close up, but I do want to get everybody, look, we're like I said, this topic's going to be here for a while. So we may have to make this a weekly segment, and we'll just update kind of where we are, what's going on with this panel here. But before we go, can everybody, if you got one party shot, and then we'll call it a wrap?
Sure. I'll jump in if you don't mind. Really appreciate everyone's opinion on here. It's been great. Here's my take on this WFT thing. I think what we're finding is like Kirk said, this is the nexus of politics, sports, race, sex, sexual orientation / gender identity, and it's all hit at the same time. And with social media all thrown in there, everything's just moving super, super fast.
Yeah.
So this could change. This thing could change daily. I mean, literally as capricious as the weather. But these are the times that we live in, and I just wish this hadn't happened. I know the WFT is a very proud franchise, having grown up here, grown up in the city, and what it means to the city. It's just unfortunate. It just really is.
Dave, real quick, two things. One, does Huggy Bear from Starsky and Hutch know you stole his robe?
Oh yeah. You like that, huh?
The other thing,
got the hoodie on here, man.
Hey,
the Grim Reaper.
Dave, can you please plug the TD report?
Absolutely. TD report. Tony Kennedy and Dave Combs, myself. He's Tony, I'm Dave. We are on Sundays, live from the Diesel Bus is where we're going to be broadcasting on Sundays, and then again on Wednesdays. Appreciate you looking us up on Facebook, and we're also on YouTube Live. Thank you.
Subscribe on YouTube, the TD Report. You can subscribe. They've got archives. These guys had the best draft coverage I saw from any media outlet. So party
Had a
shot.
lot of fun doing that.
Party shot for you.
Go ahead, Mook. Hey, go
Hey,
party shot and promote your stuff, bro.
In 2021, you know, you beg people to be decent human beings, and we want to be able to have a society of decent human beings, which is why this stretches so much beyond sport. And it's no excuse anymore, especially in the era we live in, of information being certainly 24/7. Friday is still the news dump day, but it's not like the same news dump day, you know, back in 1985, 1987. Right. It does sort of live longer. I'm disappointed. Like I said, I don't have the fact that I've been a lifelong Raiders fan, even though I've lived in this area. And it is embarrassing, even though I might not necessarily be in love so much with the NFL and some of the things that it represents. I do think that there's a little bit of a fan in all of us. And for John Gruden, and I certainly hold Mark Davis somewhat responsible also, especially all the way back to how he treated McKenzie. I'm just disappointed, period. I'm disappointed in this league. I've been disappointed in this league. I'm disappointed that the commissioner does not have more power when it comes to being able to do what's best for the business, as opposed to just being the punishment hand of the players. And I hope that I get on here, and I hope I'm 150,000% wrong. I hope by the time I speak to you guys again that we're talking about the NFL coming up with a transition ownership plan for the Washington football team, because there's something that should never die out, which is integrity. And I don't care if those emails were 10 years ago. I don't care if they're 5 years ago. I don't care if they're 7 years ago. There is no timestamp of being a decent human being. And that's what we saw and what we were exposed to throughout this weekend since Friday, is that we always try to tell the players, or some people try to tell the players, I don't say this, I always hear, you know, being in the NFL is a privilege and not a right. Well, you know what? That also pertains to coaches. That also pertains to ownership.
Owners,
and I hope
that's right.
That's acted upon.
Absolutely. That's a great point. Go ahead. Where can we find out more of your good stuff? Like
you can catch me on Twitter at MTC with Mook. It serves as a portal to everything I do. I do a lot of things on YouTube. I do some things on YouTube Live via StreamYard. You know, Rusty just starts my busy time of year where I do a ton of college basketball that I do cover. From Maryland to Georgetown to George Mason to George Washington. We're fortunate that our outlet has media credentials, so we try to get as much of the up-close, in-depth coverage as we can get. And as long as they continue to approve me to be able to cover live more and more boxing events, you're going to see a lot more boxing content. I'm of the age of remembering when boxing was important in this country.
Yeah.
My son, who just turned 15, was very, very surprised when I said, you know, when I was growing up, watching the boxing Olympic trials or Wild World of Sports on Saturday was a big deal. And he kind of looks at me like, really, what is that? So, but I cover all sports, whether it's football, basketball, boxing. It's all with me, and I enjoy it. And I certainly wanted to thank you all for giving me a platform today.
Yeah, sure. Kirk, I'll let you close us out. I just want to say again, thanks to our guests. Looking forward to having you guys back on, especially when we can have a topic where we kind of disagree. I think we're all kind of going the same way, because I would love to hear DC and Mook go at something. All right. But look, what I'll close on is this, and that is, this started with Gruden. And so we've kind of gone to the DC angle, which is great. But I just want to say this: never been impressed with John Gruden. I always considered that, I did not like the the Tampa Bay Buccaneers until this past season, but that was because of Bruce Arians and what he brought to the table with Tom Brady and that tremendous coaching staff he assembled and those players and the way he was putting that thing together. But prior to that, I always felt like, and still to this day, the greatest coach in Tampa Bay history was Tony Dungy. He brought that from being the laughingstock to being credible to being great. We actually have defenses from him and Lane Kiffin, Tampa 2, that they created and dominated with. John Gruden, if you look at his record, he was not that successful with the Raiders. In fact, he was available, even though they had making trades to get him, he wasn't that great. And eventually, he proved out that he wasn't the key to the success for Tampa Bay, and they let him go. And even now, he's been back. This is his 4th season. It's about results, but he hasn't done it. He hasn't done anything in these last couple of years, and so I just think he gave us what we wanted. He gave us the football speak. He gave us the look, and he gave us Chucky. He gave us that frown on the sideline, and that's what people liked and loved him for. But again, what has he really ever done? He wasn't that analytical when even analyzing the game on Monday nights. So, not that I don't personally like John Gruden, but I think we allow some of these characters to be overblown. And so that's what I would say about John Gruden. I think this whole topic goes well beyond John Gruden, and we go to kind of the places that we're taking it. I think maybe we are a little bit ahead of the national media on that. And again, thank you guys for being here. I want you all to follow us. We have this as a podcast, but we also have it on YouTube. We have our YouTube channel, the Kirk and Byrd Show. But I'll let you wrap things up for us neatly, Mr. Hilliard, and if you would also promote the Kirk Effect.
Oh, sure. Want to thank Dave, very articulate. Marcus, extremely articulate. Definitely check out the TD Report. Definitely check out Making the Cut, MTC with Mook on Twitter. And then our platform, the Kirk and Byrd Show, BYRD on YouTube. And we are also on Spotify. We are also on Google, Amazon, and Apple. If you look up the Kirk and Byrd Show, you'll see us on those. And we want to get you following us. We want to be different. And my closing shot is this. As this develops, I think that I will dissent some. I think there's some things, I'm choosing my words here, maybe some sissification of America. There's some things that Gruden said, and I'm not talking about the racial and, we played sports, guys, and we've talked smack. So some of this is a little, but my prediction is this. If you're wrong, Marcus, and Snyder goes down, Steve Case is the next owner of the Redskins. All right, there you go.
No.
The owner's happy with the Caps and the Wizards. Steve Case has got the
Ballmer. The Washington Post is going to dig into this. He's Ballmer. He's got the money. That's like change.
Jeff Bezos.
Oh, you're right. Bezos. You're right. Bezos. That's what
he's already here.
Bezos. I'm sorry.
Already here.
That's what I meant. Bezos.
Bezos will get the football team.
Yep. You're right. I'm sorry.
I think it's a done deal.
Yeah.
Bezos can buy the league almost. All right. We're going to close out the Kirk and Byrd Show. Thank you very much, Dave. Thank you very much, Marcus. Peace out. Thank you for listening to us.
Kirk and Byrd out.
Appreciate you guys.